Welcome back. In today's video, I will provide some pixel art feedback for Arcane characters that our dear member King Master 13 provided us with, and let's see how it goes. First thing I'd like to point out is that you did great work with the characters. I just finished watching the show. I know I'm a bit late, but I think you did an amazing job with Vi, Jace, and Victor. And I think that your style overall, I'm gonna focus on the overall image because I don't think I will have enough time in these next 10 minutes or so to cover each character by themselves. So I'll focus on the overall style. And what I see is that you have too big of a color palette. And I think that in some places, your style is a bit inconsistent. And the reason why is that is because you are focusing more on the details instead of bigger shapes. And I'll show you exactly what I mean when we jump into it. But when it comes to the style itself, if you look here at the Victor's hand, you will notice that your colors are grouped up together here. This is called banding the colors together. And this is good. I think that you should lean more towards this type of style rather than the rest of these, because if I look, let's say here at, let's say, the boots, you will notice how these colors are scattered, they are fractured, they're all over the place, and that's because you are focusing on the details instead of on the bigger shapes. And the result is that we don't read the details at all. We can't even recognize what's happening. In pixel art, we have to choose which details to keep and which details to leave out. So when it comes to that portion, I will go and find a reference image from one of these three. So give me just 1 second. Okay, I think I found a decent image for JC when it comes to the overall design. I think we can see the details that you were trying to achieve on the boots, let's say. And we can also see other things that you have tried to achieve. For example, if I look at the shirt over here, and you can see the staff, or rather the handle of the hammer, they blend in together. You have separated it with the dark outline on the bottom portion, so you can do the same thing on the upper portion as well. Now, see these two pixels? I think those were supposed to be the buttons on the shirt. That's totally fine. But the rest of this looks a bit unreadable, especially this portion. So if you look here at the color of the shirt, I will focus on the bigger shape. Okay, so on this big shape, I won't be focusing on details and rendering the, let's say, the fabric. I will just focus on the big shape. Since the chin goes over, see, the chin goes over the color, I will do the same thing. And then the color itself, I will focus on the big shape first, add some shadow beneath it, and there we go. So because I focus on the bigger shape, it's a bit more readable on what happens. And I can also group the colors here as well, so now it's even more readable, see? So we are focusing on bigger shapes first before we focus on rendering the details. That's very important. And I know you have this in you, so to speak, because you did this same thing on Victor. See how this color is grouped together? See how this is grouped together? So I know you have this style in you. And the reason why I'm talking about focusing on bigger shapes and details last is because it's very practical. When you have to animate the characters, having less details to work with really helps. It's a lot easier to animate, and also it helps the readability of the character. The next thing I want to talk about is your color palette. It's just too large. We have over 100 colors here, so I'll show you just quick easy tip how you can approach and reduce your color palette. First of all, when we are talking about cast shadow, we are using only one color for cast shadow in pixel art. Yes, it's definitely more realistic that the cast shadow is stronger the closer it is to the object that is casting the shadow, and weaker the further away it goes. That is more realistic, but in pixel art, we have to simplify things. We have to reduce the color palette as much as possible. So I will just pick one color. I think this one looks the best. And just like that, we've reduced our color palette by 3 whole colors. And imagine when you have to animate the shadow, now you have only one color to work with. You don't have to worry about 4 of those. Moving along, the way you can check which colors are being used is you can use the magic wand tool, turn off the contiguous, and you can just check which colors are being used where. And as long as you are using your colors in multiple places, so a single color being used in multiple places, that's fine. Now this is great. You are using this color on the hair and on the hammer. You are using this color on the hair, the hammer, and on the boots. So that's great. And if I go on the boots, yeah, here we go. So you have only one place where you're using the color and just on one boot, whereas the highlights are being used on both boots, and midtones, you have specific midtones for each of these. Now, because you are using the color from the hair on the boots, I'm going to extend this and use this highlight color, this bright tone, to color the highlights on the portions of the boots that are above the ankle. And there we go. We've reduced also this color palette. Next, I see that the eye has 4 colors being used only on the eye itself. Now, this isn't necessarily bad, because I like to call these colors accent colors, and they are emphasizing a very important portion of a character design. And it's totally fine if it's being used sparingly, so maybe just on 1 or 2 places. In this case, it's only the eye, so it's totally fine. Regardless, I want to say, since the color is using colors in orangish hue, so if I go and pick, yeah, it's in the orange/reddish hue, and in the same hue we have a lot of armor which are of the similar tones. For example, if I take this bright tone, it's very similar to these colors. It's not completely the same, I realize that, but by using these colors, you can see there is some difference. We have toned down the eye itself, and I guess that's not necessarily a good thing. As I've said, it's totally stylistic choice and preference, but it enabled us to reduce the color palette even more so. So if I go here on the options and create new palette from this sprite, 1 row of this has 10 colors. So remember this place. Let's see how much we've removed. We've removed almost, yeah, we've removed 10 colors. You can ignore the buggy part of this of the software. But yeah, I think that these 2 tips are very crucial. So I would like to see in your style a bit more of Victor's style when compared to the Vi and JC. And this is purely practical because, as I said, less colors you have, easier it will be to animate. And if I look here at your idle animation, I will have to undo all the changes. So there we go. So if I look at your animation, apart from few strands of hair that are being animated organically, which is great, the rest of your animation looks very stiff. You are moving your body parts only up, down, left, or right. So it's strictly 2-dimensional, and it feels very stiff and rigid. Look, only up or down, left or right. And for example, for this mechanical arm, it's totally fine because it's mechanical, it's very rigid, it's very stiff. But humans aren't mechanical like that. The muscles and tendons, they are all a lot more flexible than, let's say, pure metal arm. So if you want to make your animation look more organic, you will have to, from practical side, you will have to remove a lot of colors, and you will have to simplify your shapes. Simply because it will be easier to animate. I'm not saying that it's impossible to animate these characters. It's certainly possible and doable, but it will take a lot longer than if you simplify the characters. If I personally had to animate, I would rather pick Victor than these 2, simply because his design is a lot cleaner, whereas Vi and Jace use a style which is overly rendered, in my opinion. So this is simply stylistic preference, so that's all up to you. And the last tip I want to point out is that Arcane as a cartoon uses very interesting rendering style. So let me bring just one reference image. There we go. So if you notice the style of Arcane cartoon, it's very solid. It's like they have sculpted and also painted over this entire image. It's not cartoony like anime, that it's so stylized that it breaks away a lot from human anatomy, and it's really realistic to a certain extent. For that reason, if you wanted to create a style which is more truthful to the original image of the Arcane cartoon, instead of using shading for the face like this, which is like a chibi style, where you are bending together the cheeks and the nose into one, similar that you use here. And there's nothing wrong with this style, again, but if you wanted to be more truthful to the original style, notice that this portion between the eyes has been shaded. So we can replicate it by placing the shadow here. If you want to emphasize the forehead, you can place the highlight there. And now from this point on, we have a lot of things we can work with. You can place the nose here like that. You can place it like that. You can place it like that. You can place it like that. It's all up to you. I'll leave it, let's say, like this. This entire right side portion of the face, I'll put it in the shadow. And to emphasize the chin that this character has, and he has a really strong chin, I will place these 2 pixels like that, or perhaps you can even make it like that. It's all up to you, but I'll bring it down a little bit, and just like that we have, it's a different face, it's a different style, but it reads a bit differently. It's a lot more rigid, it's a lot more squared, if you will, and this is simply an alternative. It's not better per se, so just something to keep in mind. Okay, I think we've run out of time. Thank you for a submission, King Master 13. I think you did amazing job with the characters, and I hope these couple of tips will help you to bring more practical design in pixel art, which will result in characters that are more easily animated. Okay, that's all for today. If you are also interested in submitting your pixel art for feedback, you can do so on the Discord server, which is available only to people who are enrolled in my pixel art course, which you can do following the links in the video description. And no matter what, just remember, relax and have fun.